Hey Harvey, Ms. Gonzalez here. So today we're going to be talking about how we multiply and divide fractions. So let's go ahead and get your lines drawn in for Cornell notes and then write down your EQ. How do I multiply and divide fractions? Okay, and then just one quick thing, just a reminder so that you guys understand, just want to make sure that you guys understand that 2/5 or 2 divided by 5 is the same as this, 2 divided by 5. Okay? Just a quick reminder on that. Alright, so now let's talk about multiplying fractions. So let's put that multiply here in the margin. So we're going to multiply fractions. So when you multiply fractions, you multiply the numerator by the numerator. Okay, which one's the numerator? The top number, right? Okay. So let me just zoom that out a little bit so you go. Okay, you can see a little bit better there. Alright, so you multiply the numerator by the numerator and the denominator by the denominator. And obviously your denominator is the bottom number. So let's take a look at some examples of how we multiply fractions. So example 1. So let's take 1/3 times 3/4. Okay, so you guys remember this little dot here means that you're going to multiply. So the note says, or the rule says, when you multiply fractions, you multiply the numerator by the numerator and the denominator by the denominator. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the numerator times the numerator, so 1 times 3, and multiply by the denominator, or multiply the denominator by the denominator. So you just multiply straight across, right? So 1 times 3 is 3, and 3 times 4 is 12. So you have 3/12. So then you have to ask yourself, make sure guys, when you're dealing with fractions, can I simplify that fraction? Well, yeah, you can simplify this fraction. So definitely want to simplify this fraction. And you notice that 3 actually goes into 3 and 12 evenly. So when you divide the top and the bottom by 3, it simplifies to 1/4. There's my answer. Easy? Yeah, because all you're doing when you're multiplying fractions, you're just multiplying straight across. Numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. So let's take a look at another fraction. So we have a whole number. So example 2, when you're multiplying a whole number by a fraction. So let's say you have 4 times 1/3. Okay, so remember whenever we were talking about rational numbers the last 9 weeks, you can make a whole number look like a fraction. And how do we do that? Do y'all remember? Okay, so you do that by putting a 1 under the 4, right? So that's what we're going to do. Because when you put a 1 underneath that whole number, it doesn't change the value of that whole number 4. 4 divided by 1 is still 4, right? So we just made it look like a fraction. So now we have 4/1 times 1/3. So now we can multiply our fractions. So now you have 4 times 1 divided by 1 times 3. And 4 times 1 is 4. And 1 times 3 is 3. So now I have 4/3. But what do we call this? An improper fraction, right? Do we like improper fractions? No, we don't, right? Okay, so we need to do something with this improper fraction. So make sure you name that. Make it a different color. So this is an improper, making sure y'all can see that, improper fraction. Mine's slanted. Alright, so we have an improper fraction. Let me move this up a little bit there. Alright, so when you have an improper fraction, let's put it here. Improper fraction need to be changed to mixed number. So how do we change an improper fraction to a mixed number? You divide it, right? Horse and rider, or you T-bow that problem. So remember, T-bow is top in, bottom out, or horse and rider, story goes, the rider goes inside the house and the horse goes on the outside of the house. Alright, so since we have this improper fraction, we're going to divide it out. We're either going to do, so let's T-bow, top in, bottom out. So you put the top in the house, the bottom goes out. So that's how T-bow works. So now we can divide this. 3 goes into 4 one time. 3 times 1 is 3. You subtract that. 4 minus 3 is 1. So remember, we don't use the remainder anymore, guys. So you bring this up. We're going to leave it as a mixed number. And remember, your denominator stays the same. So 4/3 is actually 1 1/3. So we just converted 4/3 to 1 1/3 because we don't like improper fractions. So you won't leave your answer that way. You'll have to change it to a mixed number. Alright, so that's that example. So now let's take a look at when we have mixed numbers. So example 3. Something on my chair. You know, my boys were eating on the chair and there's chips. I'm sitting on chips. Okay, that was a distraction there. Alright, so let's take a look at 2 3/4 and multiply 1 5/8. Okay, so we have two mixed numbers, right? So before we can multiply these fractions or these mixed numbers, you don't want to multiply them that way, and a lot of you guys will want to do that, but you can't do that. You have to change those mixed numbers into an improper fraction. So let's make sure we put that in the notes here, that you're going to change mixed numbers to improper fractions. And the only reason we're doing that is so that we can work with them a lot easier, and we can calculate this problem. So remember, when you have mixed numbers and you need to multiply, you need to change it to an improper fraction. And do you guys remember how I showed you guys how to change mixed numbers to an improper fraction? Do you guys remember the all around Texas strategy that I showed you? So if you have 2 3/4, I'm going to rewrite them down here, and 1 5/8. So if we do all around Texas, so I'm going to go all around Texas, and then what are the initials for Texas? T and X, right? So now you apply that. In math, this means to multiply, and this means to add, right? So you take 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 plus 3 is 11. So now you have 11, and your denominator stays the same, right? So now you have 11/4. So now we're going to do all around Texas on this next one. So now we have 8 times 1, which is 8, and then 8 plus 5 is 13. So now you have 13/8. And remember, we were multiplying these these mixed numbers. We made them improper fractions first. So don't forget your multiplication symbol. So now we can go ahead and multiply those fractions. So you're going to take 11 times 13. Put that there. So 11 times 13, then to save time, I'm just going to do it really quick. It's 143. So normally you would work that out off to the side somewhere, 11 times 13, and work that out. But there it is. And then 4 times 8 is 32. Okay, so look, what do we have still though? Improper fraction, right? So, well, it was already a mixed number, miss, right? And you told me to change an improper fraction. But remember, we're only changing it to an improper fraction so that we can multiply it. So now we were able to multiply those fractions, and yes, we have an improper fraction, and we don't like improper fractions, right? So guess what we're going to have to do to this improper fraction? We're going to have to divide it, right? And turn it back into a mixed number. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to T-bow this, so top in, bottom out, right? So 143 divided by 32. Well, 32, and then we'll work this out over here. 32 actually goes into 143, because we know it doesn't go into 1, doesn't go into 4, but it goes into 143. I believe it's 4 times. Yep. So it goes in there 4 times. So then we got to subtract that. 13 minus 8, that's 5. 3 minus 2 is 1. So we're going to leave that as a, oops, let me move that up, sorry. We're going to leave that as a, as a mixed number, so we're going to take our remainder. So it's 4 and 15 over 32. And again, if you can simplify the fraction, though you'll want to simplify it. But in this case, you can't simplify. There's nothing that can go into 15 and 32 evenly. So your answer here, 143 over 32, is actually, let me write it here, 4 and 15 over 32. So make sure you box your answer. Okay, so that is how you multiply fractions. So now we're going to take a look at how we divide fractions. So I'm out of space here. I don't want to start dividing fractions in here, so I'm going to do mine on the back side. Some of you guys may still have plenty of room. Some of you guys probably already had to flip the page, right? So make sure you draw your lines for Cornell notes, because we always do Cornell notes. Alright, so it's not going to be straight, of course. Don't worry about that. Alright, so dividing fractions. So we're going to write dividing fractions. Alright, so dividing fractions. When we divide fractions, we are actually going to use a strategy that I'm going to show you. It's called KCF. Some of you guys may not need to use it, but like I said, the strategies, whatever we show you guys or whatever I showed you, you can use it if it works. If it doesn't, and you have another strategy that works for you, then use that strategy. So whenever we divide fractions, move this over. Okay, so when you're dividing fractions, you're going to keep, make that a P. You're going to keep the first number or fraction. I'm going to put number or fraction because your first, it could be a whole number. So you're going to keep the first number or the fraction. You're going to change the division sign to multiplication, and then you're going to flip the second number or fraction. So if you notice, there's your keep change flip, KCF, not KFC, but KCF. But a lot of you guys will confuse that with Kentucky Fried Chicken, but it's not Kentucky Fried Chicken, it is keep change flip. So let's look at some examples on how you would use this. Oh, and first I need you guys to understand what this word means, reciprocal. And I have to say it like that so I can make sure that I spell it correctly. Reciprocal. Yep, reciprocal. Okay, so reciprocal, that's the step here. Pretty much all you're doing is flipping. So if you're asked for the reciprocal of 1/5, well, the reciprocal of 1/5 is, I'm sorry, I wrote that backwards. 1 over, scratch that, 5 over 1. I was just writing down the same thing. So reciprocal of 1/5 is 5 over 1. You're just flipping the fraction. Okay, so just keep that in mind because you will see that term reciprocal, and if you don't know what it means, you won't know what to do. But reciprocal just means to flip the fraction. Alright, so let's look at an example. So if I have, let's say 2 divided by 1/5. Okay, so remember, like when we were multiplying, we looked at one where you had a whole number. How do I make this whole number look like a fraction? Well, first I have to put a 1 underneath it, right? So 2 over 1 divided by 1/5. Alright, so now we have two fractions, right? So now we can apply the keep, change, and the flip. So what I do, I write it on top. Let me find my other pen so it stands out, the darker one. Keep, we change, and we flip. You see that? Okay, so we're going to keep the first number or fraction. So you're going to keep my first fraction, right? So that's going to stay. I'm just going to put arrows. We're moving on. So we're going to keep that one. And then we're going to change the division sign to multiplication. And the reason we know to, or the reason we change it to multiplication, because the inverse of division is multiplication, right? So what you're doing is taking the inverse when you're changing it. So we're taking the inverse of division, so which is multiplication, and then we're going to take the reciprocal of 1/5. So the reciprocal of 1/5, which all we're doing is flipping it, is 5 over 1. So now all we're doing is multiplying fractions, which we just learned how to do, right? So pretty simple. Now we just multiply straight across, numerator by numerator, denominator by denominator. So that's what we're going to do. 2 times 5 and 1 times 1. Well, 2 times 5 is 10, and 1 times 1 is 1. And look at what we have there. It's an improper fraction, right? So we don't like improper fractions, and this one happens to be a really nice improper fraction because 10 divided by 1 is just 10. And we're done. Easy, right? Alright, so let's take a look at another example. So let's take a look at what we do when we have a mixed number, because you're going to see those. So let's take a look at 2 divided by, is it 1 1/3? Yeah, 1 1/3. Okay, so first, before we do anything, we need to take a look at this. We need to take care of this and make it look like a fraction, and then we need to take care of this mixed number and make it like an improper fraction, right? So first, we're going to make, put arrow, 2 over 1, because 2 divided by 1 is still 2. We don't change the value of it, but we make it look like a fraction. And then we're going to have to apply the all around Texas to this, right? 3 times 1 is 1, and 3 plus 1 is 4. So now we have 4 over 3, 4/3. So, did I do that right? Yep. Make sure y'all double check me. So now I have the 2 divided by 1, or 2 over 1 divided by 4/3. Now we can go ahead and apply the keep, change, flip. So we're going to keep, we're going to change, and we're going to flip. So again, we keep the 2 over 1. You change this, you take the inverse of division, and the inverse of division is multiplication. You got it. So you're going to multiply, and then we take the reciprocal of 4/3, and the reciprocal of 4/3 is, well, you just flip 4/3, which is 3 over 4. Okay, so now all we do is multiply fractions straight across, numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. So you take 2 times 3 and 1 times 4. So now I have 2 times 3 on the top, which is 6, and then 1 times 4 in the bottom, which is 4. We have an improper fraction, right? So we're going to T-bow this improper fraction, top in, bottom out. 4 goes in the 6 one time. 6 minus 4 is 2. And then you bring this up and leave it as a fraction. And you notice you can simplify 2/4. 2/4 it simplifies to 1/2. So 6/4. Hi, baby. Okay, go with daddy. That's Tristan. So you simplify this. 6/4 simplifies to 1 and 1/2. Okay, so go with daddy, boys. Alright, so you guys are going to work on this example on your own. I would like for you guys to take 1/3 and divide it by 1/6. You guys work that out, and then once you are done working that out, once you guys write your reflection at the bottom, today I learned, finish that statement using vocabulary from your notes, okay? Don't just put, today I learned how to multiply fractions. I want you to be more detailed. Give me an example. How do you multiply fractions? Okay? You should be able to tell me, today I learned how to multiply fractions, or today I learned how to divide fractions by putting this into words, this last example. Or if you didn't learn, or you're still confused on something, I'm still confused about, and then tell me, what are you confused about? Is it the multiplying fractions, which step you're confused about, or is it dividing fractions? But tell me which step you're confused about. Okay, don't just tell me that you're still confused about dividing fractions and that's it. That is, you know, I need to know specifically. Okay, all right, thank you, bye.